Are you ready to expand your life and reality? Join us for the next hour with Jamie Bates as she shares life-changing thoughts, techniques, and awarenesses to help you expand your reality.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Jamie Bates, consciousness facilitator and expander of realities. My mission with my radio show is to create greater awareness of what is possible and to expand you beyond the limitations of this reality. I am grateful that you're joining me today. And today I wanted to take some time to kind of talk about my new book that I just recently launched. It's called The Empath's Guide to Consciousness and Awareness. But also, more than anything, I really wanted to take a little bit of time to share my personal journey, to really look at really what makes me qualified to share this information that I know. It was interesting because I had somebody ask me that, I don't know, probably like a week ago, what makes me qualified to teach what I teach? And I thought, that's a good question. I've been doing this for so long, and it's kind of just this intrinsic knowing that I have. And I thought, I really need to maybe take some time to really even talk about this and sort through this myself and really look at what truly does make me qualified. It's interesting in my coaching business and my facilitating business, I should say. I currently have lots of professionals that I facilitate. I have a psychologist. I have several therapists. I have lots of nurses. I have a couple doctors. All these people that quote unquote are professionals in their field, and not to say that they're not in any way, shape, or form, because they totally 100% are. But it's like, for me, I wouldn't say that I am. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't have a degree. How about that? I don't have a degree in what I do, because really there isn't a degree in what I do, for one thing. But really, what really truly sets me apart, and where did I learn how to do this? And so I thought, today I'm going to just dive into me, who I am, what my story is, and really how I got to the place that I am today, and what makes what I do so different than maybe other things that you've experienced. So, without making anything else wrong here, I'm just going to really dive in and really start just talking. So, and just really getting to, what is it that I do, and how did I get here? Yeah. So to start here today, let's just do some expanding. Let's just really get into that true space of who we be. So let's go ahead and put our barriers down, our barriers down, our barriers down, our barriers down. And take a nice deep breath. And let's go ahead and expand. Make yourself as big as the building that you're in. Go all the way out, all the way down, and all the way up. And make yourself as big as the country that you're in, all the way out, all the way down, and all the way up. I think I just said, did I just say country? I guess we're going all the way out, huh? I was going to start small, but I guess not. Let's do that one more time. Make sure you're out as big as the country that you're in. All the way out, all the way down, and all the way up. Keep going, keep going. And let's just do the planet that we're on. Bigger, faster, as big as planet Earth. And the universe. Here we go. Bigger, faster, bigger, faster, bigger, faster. Multiverse, multiple universes. And times that by a million, times that by a million, times that by a million. And all the way out to the space of who you be as the infinite being that you be. Yeah. Awesome. So really getting into that true space of who we be, today I don't really have a plan. I just wanted to kind of touch on some things that I feel like each and every one of us can kind of relate to. So today, to start out, I'm just going to kind of talk about my story. I'm going to talk about where I'm at, and then I'm going to lead into what really brought me into the work that I do, and ending with really the book that I just wrote. So I'm going to say here, as kind of a prelude to what I'm talking about here, I'm not sharing anything that I have personally gone through to make anyone in my life wrong. I would like to just really say that. We all have our journeys, right? We all have our own personal stories of things that we've experienced. And one of the things that I have really learned personally is this is my path. And my path has to do with who I am as an infinite being. And the people that have assisted me on my path have created certain energies that I personally required to be able to get to where I am today. I'm really truly a firm believer in the idea that nothing, quote unquote, happens to us. Everything is kind of, your life is kind of designed around this energy where it leads you to exactly where you need to be and what you came here to experience, what you came here to do in this reality. And me personally, and I feel like if you're listening to the show, if you've been a follower of who I am and what I do, we are the ones that maybe have had I think everyone's had difficulties in their life, right? And I think some of us have more difficulties than others. But those of us on a true enlightened path and an awakening path have been through many trials and triumphs in our life. And I do personally feel like that is 100% designed that way. If you've listened to my show, if you've been part of any of my programs or anything like that, you know that I talk a lot about uh, this idea that, you're not from here. You came here to experience the limitation within this reality, right? And what a better way to experience than to go through things that are painful and things that are hard and things that are difficult, right? Because they teach us so much about the resilience of who we be and who we are. Yeah, so nothing I'm going to share today is out of this idea that I'm making anyone wrong or I am making the experience that I had wrong. I get that every single thing that I have been through, that I have learned from, that I have lived in, has contributed to where I am today. And without these experiences, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And so I'm thankful and grateful for each and every one of them. So, with that being said, my mom was very, very young when she got pregnant with me. She was still a teenager in high school. And she never told anybody that she was pregnant. And she went through her pregnancy and gave birth to me on her own and by herself, which, if you've ever had a child, you know how absolutely terrible and horrifying that is to think about, even giving birth alone, right? And my mom, it's not something that we openly discuss. It's something that I feel like is an intrinsic part of who I am, being kept a secret through her pregnancy and then giving birth to me herself in her own bedroom, and then experiencing what I experienced from that point forward, really to me kind of puts in perspective, if you will, of kind of like, I feel like most of the people that have uh, done really amazing things in this world have come from a beginning that was very rough, right? And I feel like that's kind of part of my story, is that, the beginning of my life was not ease. Being born on that frequency of, even being uh, being kept a secret and then being born. My grandma tells the story often, or she used to tell me the story often about how the dog woke her up, and how when they went in there, neither one of us were breathing, and how scary it was, and how when I got to the hospital, no one wanted to work on me, and how very terrifying the whole ordeal was. And I can only imagine how scary and uh, just life altering that experience was for my mom. And so, uh, starting out my life was difficult, to say the least, because my mom was not prepared to be a mother. She was not prepared to journey as a mom, right? And so, having me as a teenager, and then kind of moving forward with her life and trying to figure it out on her own, was there was a lot of difficulty around that. And at that time, my grandma and her didn't really see eye to eye. So I feel like there was a lot of, there was separation, and there was just a lot of struggle. And so at a very young age, really experiencing immense amounts of struggle with my mom. And my mom did, move out. She did try starting a life on her own. But, being young and having the responsibility of having a young child is extremely difficult. And so there was lots of not very good choices that were made. I can remember living in homeless shelters. I can remember just lots of experiences that many people probably don't really experience as a child. So we were very poor. My mom chose lots of very abusive relationships, so there was a lot of moving. There was a lot of I can remember, there was times where I potentially went to 3 or 4 different schools in one school year because of the unsettledness of trying to kind of figure out life, figure out where was going to work, that kind of stuff. And so there was lots of turmoil in my very young years. And when I was, gosh, 10, 11 years old, my mom met the man that she married and is still with today. So it was a happy ending for my mom. She did find someone to kind of love her and cherish her and take her under her wing, and really kind of spend the rest of her life with. And that was really a blessing to her. But for me, it was kind of one of those things where I had already experienced so much of life that it was very hard for me to settle into. All of a sudden, we had quote unquote happiness and settledness, and that that inner struggle that I was already living in, that inner upheaval that my soul had already been through. um, I would say, when I look at it now, I can see that, like, that never really went away for me. That was kind of still the intrinsic vibration that I was living my life in. And so I want to kind of talk about a couple experiences here that are what I would call kind of memories in my soul of of different areas where I decided different things about who I was and how I carried those memories with me. And when I got to a certain point, I started to realize how I was referencing those memories of who I was, and when I decided to really break through that. So I want to go back a little bit here. So when I was little, and when I was going through a lot of the turmoil me and my mom were going through, there was a lot of time I spent alone. My mom was trying to work several jobs, kind of trying to make ends meet, right? Because it was just me and her, I think she really depended on me to be very independent at a very, very, very young age. And I can remember very vividly going to this one school. I honestly can't even tell you what district it was in. I can't tell you what town it was in, but I can tell you I have a very vivid memory of walking to this school every morning. And I remember this one particular day, um, and this is so I remember this one particular day, and I remember walking into the school. I remember going into the classroom, and I remember hearing a lot of the children kind of laughing and pointing and staring. I remember the teacher coming over to me and saying, who helped you get ready for school this morning? And I said, well, nobody helped me get ready for school this morning. And she said, well, what do you mean nobody helped you get ready for school this morning? Wasn't your mom home? And I said, no, nobody was home this morning. I got myself up and came to school. I remember the teacher being kind of very mortified. Now, this brings up a lot of feelings for me, sharing this, because it's kind of that thing where it's like, feeling that judgment of, from other people, of really even being like, yeah, that I'm just going to clear that for all of us. Everything, all of that is all of that, 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 all of that. And all the shame and blame in and around all of that. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now? And vaporize, 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 vaporize. So I remember telling the teacher that nobody had helped me get ready for school, that I had gotten ready myself and brought myself to school. And I remember her saying, do you know that second grade, it's not appropriate for you to stay home alone? And I mean, like, what was I going to do? I was in second grade, right? Like, okay. So I remember at that point really feeling this fear of like, okay, I'm going to get in trouble for something that is so beyond my control, right? I had no control over the fact that I was home alone in second grade, right? I had no control over the fact that that I had gotten myself ready for school and brought myself to school, and I had absolutely positively no control over that. And again, not looking at this from the space of making anyone wrong, because I totally get that. That was part of my journey, right? Because this is a picture memory that I remember from my childhood. I remember this so vividly. And I remember the teacher telling me basically how inappropriate the things that I was wearing to school were, and that I basically wasn't allowed to be wearing that, and that I needed to go home. And instead of even like calling anyone, I don't even know, I mean, I don't remember any of the details, but I do remember going down to the office, and I do remember them telling me that I needed to go home. And I remember leaving the school and walking home. And I remember at that very moment how very different I felt from the rest of the world, and how very, what's the word I'm looking for, separate I was, and how very wrong I felt about that separateness. And because I wanted to really talk about that, because I feel like that was a very, very core decision I made at that very young age, second grade, what are you, like 7, 8 years old? I made that core decision that I was separate, that I was bad, that I was different than everyone else. And I pretty much based the rest of my experience in this life on that core experience, on the wrongness that I felt, on the core separation I felt when all those kids were like staring and laughing, and the teacher, made me wrong, and, told me how unacceptable it was, and something that I had no control over, right? Everywhere all of that is, and everywhere someone's done that to you. Yes, everything, all of that is. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now? And vaporize, 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 vaporize. Let's go all the way down with that and just really vaporize that all the way through. all the way through, 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 all the way through. You know, that's one of the things that I really know about us that are different. There's these core windows, these core experiences that we have stored as real and true about who we have decided that we are based on what someone else told us about something we had no control over. And everywhere you did that, and everywhere you're defining yourself as something as that, can we just choose to remove all of that from all of universes? And can we just choose that now? And vaporize, 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 vaporize. So I carried that picture of part of who I was, as every time I would look at myself, I would see myself as that little child who was uncared for and unkept, right? And was lonely and alone most of the time, and really had very little self-worth on really who she was. And as I carried that memory through my life, I based many of my experiences on that memory of who I felt like I was. And so continuing on, as I became a teenager, and again, like not making that experience particularly uh, significant. You know, there was many experiences that kind of followed that same experience, that validated that same thought about who I was. And you know, each and every one of us, I know we have these pictures or these experiences of who we decided we were, right? And this is what I really want you to look at today, because you base your whole value system on who you think you are based on those experiences. Yeah, everything, all of that is right there. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of universes? And can we just choose that now? And vaporize, 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 vaporize. You know, when I initially start working with someone, this is kind of the first thing that we start really looking at here is, what core pictures are you identifying as who you are? You know, who did you decide you were when you were young? Because much of what we decide we are when we are young is what we continue to identify with. And those again, those core pictures of who we think we are is what we continually validate in our current reality. So when you change those core pictures, when you really can look at those core pictures of who you are, just like I just did, right? As uncomfortable as it is, right? When you really look at it and you realize that, you know, that identification is not you. It's not something that you had control over. It's not something that you have to continue to validate. Yeah, and everything, all of that is, can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now? Vaporize, 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 vaporize. So I'm going to continue on now. So as I continued on, and I grew up, and then all of a sudden, you know, going into this, my mom's happy and has this, you know, she gets married and has this relationship, and it's like all of these old places where we used to live, all of these things that, you know, all these energies we used to identify with were no longer prevalent in my life. It was not something I could just easily untangle myself from. Now, I knew growing up, I knew as a teenager, I knew I no longer wanted to identify with these defined patterns of who I decided that I was, right? Growing up in poverty, growing up where you don't have stability, where you don't know where your food's going to come from, where you don't know, you know, what school you're going to be going to next week, when you don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow and have to leave the home that you've been living in for the last 2 weeks, or if you're going to stay there, you know, not knowing if you go to school, what people are going to say to you, what things are going to happen to you. You know, all of these things were these kind of these fight or flight synapses that I had been living my life from. All of a sudden, it was like, okay, now I'm taking you into this settled environment where now you have to be settled. And I remember really, really, truly struggling. And I remember actually, you know, going through the experiences I went through, it was lots of abuse, and not necessarily not from my mom, but from other people, in the environments that I was in. Lots of abuse, uh, physically, sexually, you name it. Okay, and I'm not going to really get into the details of it, but again, storing those core pictures of the experiences that I had, right? And for me, it always kind of looked like these were experiences that were happening to my body, not to me. And as I grew older, I started to realize that that was where I was disassociating, right? That was where I had disassociated from my life. That was where I had been a viewer of the experiences that I had, and not necessarily an experiencer of the experiences. I hope that makes sense. And so I started really diving into, especially as a teenager, how do I really get beyond this emotional trauma that I have experienced? Because I knew even at that teenage age, instead of going down that path of drugs and alcohol and further separation, for me, it was always like, okay, this is what I've been through. This is what I've experienced. Now, how do I take that experience and create it as something different? How do I go beyond that experience? Now I'm not going to, for 1 minute, say that I never did turn to drug and alcohol as a suppressant for that, because I absolutely positively did, especially in my teenage years. But what I realized was, it didn't take away my experience in any way, shape, or form. It just numbed me for a short time. And I realized that it just really didn't feel worth it in the end, right? Because it didn't expand me. It didn't bring me this sense of gratification. It didn't bring me this sense of feeling changed. So at one point, I can't remember how old I was, maybe 15, 16 years old. My mom started taking me to counseling because she figured that I needed help dealing with this. Now, I really didn't feel like I needed help, because I felt like I understood very, very clearly everything I had been through. And I never really felt like this tortured, emotional upset about it. It was always kind of like, yeah, that stuff that happened to me. Now can we move on? Like, it's okay. I just want to be done with it. I don't want to, I don't want to be the effect of it any longer. And it was always kind of this energy of like, oh, well, you don't get to just let it go. You have to process back through it. You have to experience it. You have to, really kind of, and I remember talking to several people in my family about some different stuff that had happened to me and how upset they got about it. And I thought, geez, like, you're more upset about it than I am. Like, I get it. I totally get it. I do. But at the same time, like, I didn't get it, because, like, this was an experience I had. And why does it have to really kind of clog everyone else up, for lack of a better word? Everything, all of that is. Everywhere you're associating with someone else's problems and internalizing them as your own. It's everything, all of that is, all of that, 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 all of that. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now? And vaporize, 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 vaporize. And this is, again, not to like diminish anybody else's feelings or to make anybody else wrong, but this is my personal journey, and not to even say that I wasn't affected by stuff that happened to me. I absolutely positively was, and I felt the effects of what had happened to me, right? But I got to a certain point at a very young age where I was like, okay, that happened. Let's move on. Like, how can we go beyond this? Why do we have to kind of waller in the past? Why can't I just release it and move forward? So going to counseling, going to therapy, going to psychologists, it was kind of always that same replay, right? Like, you have to really look at it. You have to really, talk about it. How did that make you feel? And I just got to the point where I was like, I'm kind of done. And so that was when I started really, I knew something else greater was out there. I knew something different existed that could really just get me out of that energy, space, and consciousness. Now, maybe I didn't have the words of energy, space, and consciousness at that time, but I did know that something greater really truly existed. And so I want to say I was probably 15 years old the first time I ever experienced Reiki. And I thought, yes, this is something like I really need to go down this road. I really need to release this energy emotionally so I can move on with my life. And at that point, I started really diving into, what can I do? What can I be? What do I know? Who can I see? I started really being inquisitive. Now, my grandma, I did have a relationship with my grandma at this point, and my grandma started taking me to a lady. This was before I could drive. I don't even know how old I was, 14 maybe, to a lady who was a local lady who was an angel reader. And what she did was she had you sign your name on a card, and she basically picked up your vibration, and she tapped into who you were, and then she read from like an angel script, or like I can't remember what it was called. It was like what she called kind of like anyways, something that she read from that your angels gave her. And the first time I ever went and seen her, she literally, like, she took my card and she said, okay, I'm gonna, tap into the energy of, who you are and whatever. And she told me a little story, and we were at her home, and she cried and cried and cried and cried. And she just sat there crying. And I'm sitting there like, okay. And she said, she said this to me, and I see it so clearly in other people, this energy where she said, when you've experienced something traumatic in your life, the angels come and they protect you from it, right? And so an angel will come, especially if you ask for help. And I see this often in people, when you ask for help with something, and because we do live in an ask and receive universe, right? So when you ask, you shall receive. So she said, every time you ask for help, which I can remember being very, very small and continuously asking for help. I can't deal with this. Please send me help. Please help me with this. Blah blah blah. So she said, every time you ask for help, you're sent this like this big angel, and this angel like takes the experience from you. And when the angel takes the experience from you, they hold the experience within your being, right? So the experience is still part of who you are, but you weren't actually part of the experience, which instantaneously made so much sense to me, because that was why I always could vision myself in the experience, right? But I wasn't actually the effect of the experience. And she said, I just want you to know that you have hundreds. And that statement stuck with me my whole life. To hear her say, you have hundreds, resonated so deeply in my core, because I knew that there was a place where I had literally stopped functioning within the piece or the place of who I was. And it so made sense to me why I had such a disassociation within the experiences. So as I started to really, I guess I'm going to go back to this experience. So essentially, after she did the reading, I decided right that moment, like, I needed to work with her. I needed to work through this. I needed someone who knew and who could see, who could literally help me and guide me back through the recollection of who I was. Right? All of these experiences that I had given away, all of these experiences that I had separated myself from. And I knew that I needed to become whole again. I needed to be all of the space of me. I needed to be all of the energy, space, and consciousness of who I was. So I could move forward with my life without the disassociation of the different parts and pieces of who I was. And so I really dove in with her. I worked with this woman for quite a few years, through my teenage years. Once I started driving, I went there often, sometimes spending 3-4 hours at a time at her house, just really diving into, what does this mean? How can we change this? How can I make this better? And I just really learned so much through that connection about how we store these mental pictures of who we are and what we've experienced, and how we disassociate with them, and how they still are like created within space of who we are. And so I worked with her for quite a few years, and I started really honing who I was, I would say, as a healer, because I started to realize through this experience that I knew things about people that no one else knew, right? And I always thought that everyone knew those things, right? Have you ever had those experiences where you say something and people are like, what are you talking about? And you're like, well, don't you know that? Because, like, I know that. Like, that's just part of who I am. It was just part of who I was. I could see things about people. I could make reference points about different experiences and how they created different things in their life. And the more and more I understood about these different systems and how these different things were created in our reality, I started to realize more and more about how I could take what I knew to help other people. So in my 20s, I just continued to kind of dive into this. I started really studying, all things, I'm going to say metaphysical, spiritual. Um, I would say my early 20s, I started going to this ascension group is kind of what it was called at the time. And it was this group of all these old ladies. I say old ladies, but really they were, I mean, I was like in my early 20s, right? These were like ladies that were 60, 70 years old, talking about what was going to happen in 2012, really talking about when we were going to have this awakening, when we were going to have this ascension, when we were going to go through this process of waking up in this reality. And I started really spending a lot of time with these ladies, and I started again making these connections to what I knew and what really, like, gosh, I mean, there's just so many parts and pieces, and I feel like I'm already running out of time because I'm already about a little over 35 minutes into my story here, and I feel like I'm dragging. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to really kind of make connection points to why I know what I know. So I spent a lot of time in these ascension groups. I started really studying healing. I started really studying, really the energy, space, and consciousness of who we are, and really looking at what is it that I know that no one else knows that I can use. Yeah, I just want you to receive that for a minute. What do you know that no one else knows that you can use as part of this experience here? More space, 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 more space. So in my 20s, I really started to embrace that I was different. and that I started doing readings, I started doing healings, I got my Reiki master, I took every class I could, I went and took, quantum touch and healing touch and, you name it. It was like, it was for me. Like I was ready. I was on this journey where I was really ready to discover who I was and what I was here for. I went to massage school. I realized that, I could literally put my hands on people's body and I could create an instantaneous change. But one of the things that I realized was I could create an instantaneous change, but if they went back out into the world and they chose the same thing they were choosing before, that instantaneous change would go right back. I mean, I had experiences where I had, especially being a massage therapist and being a healer. I mean, I have so many stories. I've really debated about writing a book just about the people I've seen and the experiences I've had as a healer and as a therapist. I had this one person in particular. I wanted to share a couple stories today because I feel like we get in this hopeless cycle where we feel like nothing can change our situation. And again, I want to go back to what I was talking about, the energy space and consciousness with the pictures, with the storage space. The thing is like we have storage space from multiple generations and multiple uh, reincarnations, all within the energy space and consciousness of who we be. I had this one client, and this was kind of one of my very first experiences with true deep healing, that really changed something inside of me. So I had this client who was an older gentleman, and his wife had started to come see me for massage, and she was just really experiencing such profound relief. And she started telling me about her husband, who her husband had this issue where he had this burning sensation in his arm, and this burning sensation was going from his wrist up to his elbow, and it was just the front of his arm. And she said it had started just periodically, just randomly one day, just started this intense burning sensation. And this burning sensation was basically ruining their whole life. And she was telling me how he had been to doctors, he had been to physical therapy, he actually had surgery, several surgeries. And at one point, he said, I can't live with this. I can't live with this anymore. I can't go on like this. And so she said, do you think you can help him? And I said, well, bring him in. Let's see what I can do. And so I actually started working with him, and I told him, I'm not really sure. I don't really know what's possible here. I'm going to do the best I can. And so, one of the things that I have learned about this work is sometimes it takes me a while to get through the energetic layers of storage information that you have to really get to the core picture of what you have stored, right? And once we can release that core picture, we can really change everything. And so, I mean, I had already been working with people. I had already had other experiences where I had been able to change that core picture, and I had been able to change, what's going on for them. So anyways, I start working with him, and I want to say it was probably 4 sessions in, and I wasn't doing massage. I was doing kind of some energy work that I had developed myself. And during the time we were working together, he told me that that pain had stopped and that it wasn't hurting. And he actually cried. He said, it's the first time, and I want to say this had been happening at this point for like 7 or 8 years, that the pain actually stopped. And so he kept coming back. I want to say it was like 8 sessions in. And so at this point, every time he came to see me, the arm pain would stop, and it would stop for, as he came, it would stop for several hours after. And I want to say it was like it was like around our 8th or 9th session. I was working on him, and I seen this intense picture of him standing around a fire, and there was Indians, and he was dressed in this um, it wasn't really like full gear. It was like a I would say like a I can't really explain it, but he wasn't dressed in Indian gear. He definitely was not an Indian. He was an outsider. And I seen all these Indians doing these dances around him, and there was this big fire, and I could tell, I could sense that he was in big trouble for something that he had done. And I could just feel all of this emotion attached to it. And during the experience, I seen, and this might be a trigger warning for people, um, just so you know, but I seen this that they had put this hot like poker thing in the fire, and it was like this hot metal rod, and they swung the metal rod around, and they pushed it right at the top of his arm and slid it all the way down and pulled all of the skin off of his arm. And I instantaneously knew that that was the mental picture that he had stored, and that pain he was having was based on that mental picture. And so I cleared that mental picture. I allowed that experience to go all the way through him. And when we got done with the session, I explained to him what I had saw. And he cried and I cried, and he said, well, my pain is gone for now. We shall see if that clears it up. And wouldn't you know that he never came and seen me again. I mean, his wife did come and tell me that he was better. And I ran into him, can't remember how long ago it was now. It was just recently, within the last couple of months. And he came over to me and he recognized me, he remembered me. I mean, it's been, I don't even know how long. I'm not even going to try to guess, because it's probably been it's been well over 10 years. And he said, you changed everything for me when you released that for me. I never had pain again. And when I started seeing people and I started releasing those mental pictures, when I started to see that, I understood the mental pictures in a way that no one else did. Maybe not no one else did, but in a way that I could translate them to create something different. And so I created a process of releasing when I was physically working on people. And then when I started really doing this, like when I decided to stop working in my healing center, it was really truly because I realized that the core work I really truly wanted to do was to work with people who were really interested in changing their whole life. And although you can help people change things when you're doing massage and you're doing energy work and you're doing things, you absolutely positively can. But for me, it was such a deep experience to be able to really get to the mental pictures, to really get to the energy space and consciousness that people were identifying within, and be able to release that and be able to change their whole life. And so that's what really led me to the place that I am today. And I know I babbled a lot about lots of stuff, and I'm running out of time here for my show today. But my new book, the Empath's Guidebook to Consciousness and Awareness, really has a lot of tools that I personally use right now, that I teach my clients, that I share with people, to really get to releasing essentially those mental pictures where you have identified with stuff that is repeating the patterns and creating certain energies in your life. As I've grown, and as I've learned, and as I've even experienced certain traumas in my life, and I've experienced ups and downs, and I've grown, and I've went through my fair share of life. The thing that I've learned is, if there's anything showing up in your life that you don't like, especially for myself being a mom, one of the things I really never wanted to be was, I didn't want to um, be angry, right? And so when you don't want to be something, especially when you're young and you decide I don't want to be this, well, generally you attract that very thing that you don't want to be, because again, you store that mental picture, right? When I say I don't want to be angry, what I do is I store anger, because that's what I'm resisting. And so what I've realized over the years is I have to get to all of those storage spaces where, again, I made those decisions. I didn't want to be angry. I stored that situation of anger within my energy space and consciousness. I continue to perpetrate the cycles of anger, especially with my children. And when I got to a point in my life where I said, you know what, no more. I had to make massive change in my life. That was actually when I started saying no more, when I started really looking at wanting to change, wanting to heal, wanting to really change completely, was when I had to make lots of big decisions. And that was really when I decided that I was going to throw myself into this work completely, 100%. I was no longer going to be in a space where I wasn't making big change, not only for myself, but for the people I was working with. Yeah, and so I decided those things, and I started actively pursuing what I could be, what I could do, what I knew, how I could put this together in a way that it made sense for other people, that it created these massive waves of change, that it literally is a life-changing experience to work with me. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to choose? And people will tell me, well, I don't know, I want to do this, but I can't. You know, no, you can do anything that you put your mind to. You can put anything that you put out the awareness of, anything that you decide you want to create for your life, you can. I'm actually getting ready to do a new series that is kind of based on a lot of the stuff I'm teaching in my book, and it's really called Ending the I Don't Know. You know, it's really getting clear about what is it that you want to choose in your life, and choose it. Like, let's get clear first. Let's really get clear about who you want to be and what you want to do. Let's choose it. Let's dynamically choose it. Let's clear all of those pictures, all of those thoughts, all of those ideas, all of those mental images, right, that you've stored that says this is who you are. Let's clear all of those and realize that you don't have to energetically hold those spaces anymore. You can have, do, or be anything that you desire. Anything. Anything you have an awareness of is something that you can create. And so we're going to clear those mental pictures, and then we're going to move forward with really choosing and really actualizing what you want your life to be like. So if you're listening to this show today and you're wondering, like, what in the heck I'm talking about, because I have gone all over the place, right? You know, I talked about a little bit about my story here. I hope that this really kind of makes sense to you as to how I've gotten to this place where I'm at right now. And I will tell you the same thing I tell a lot of other people. I've chose where I'm at right now. I didn't let anything stop me, right? I had an awareness that I knew things about something that no one else knew, and I was ready and willing and capable and able, because I allowed myself, I gave myself that space. Yeah, and everywhere you're not allowed to give yourself that space, can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now? Vaporize, depress, 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 depress. So if you want more, if you want to know how you can do that for yourself, my book is now available on Amazon.com. It's the Empath's Guidebook to Consciousness and Awareness. It's available on Kindle, and you can also get it as a regular book. I do have my new series coming up. It's going to be starting just like a week and a half, and really, you know, it's called Ending the I Don't Know. If you're really truly ready to really get clear about who you are, you know, this book is for me, it was an amazing sense of clarity about who I am. This is my life's work. This is what I do. This is what I help people with. This is who I am. When I chose to write that book, I chose to write that book years ago. It's taken me many, many years of putting it together to actually actualize it. And now to be able to say that I did it, I'm realizing how many other choices I've put on hold because of it. I'm going to start choosing big. Okay, I've gotten to where I'm at right now by making choices every single day in my life. And today I want to invite you into that same space. You ready to make some big choices? Are you ready to get clear about what you want to choose in your life? If you're ready to get clear, if you're ready to clear out all of those mental pictures, all of those mental blocks that are stopping you and telling you can't have, and you're really ready to choose it, and you're ready to really stand in the energy of that and really start actualizing that in your life, please join me, www.jamie-bates.com. And really, let's dive in together. And again, the class is called Ending the I Don't Know. It's only $99. It's going to be 21 days. Basically, for 21 days, I'm going to email you every single day. And if you're listening to this course after this starts, this will still be available on my website. It's going to be $99. The actual class does start April 21st, I believe is the date, 2019. And again, if you're listening to this after April 21st, you can still register, because basically what I do with all these classes is I put them on kind of an autoresponder. So if you sign up, basically what happens is you start getting the emails immediately if it is after the start date. If it is before the start date, you can join us live. And basically what happens is every single day for 21 days, you're going to get an email from me. Every day the email is going to have an audio in it with some clearing, with some information. There might also be some worksheets for you to do. There's also going to be a group that you're going to be part of that is just for the group of people that are doing this course. And there you can ask questions. There we'll really get into really looking at all of the aspects of choice. And also there you can really share the different mental pictures that are coming up for you, the different thoughts and ideas that you're having that you feel like are stopping you, because we will definitely be diving into those. So if you're joining us live, you can actually share your mental pictures with me, and I will really help you kind of work through them. Then we will also really get into how to choose what it is that you really truly desire. And if you've worked with me before, if you've listened to any of my work, you know that I have a gift with helping people to manifest stuff. It is one of my special skills. I do know how to really hone in on the mental pictures that are stopping you and really clear them out. So when you join us live, it really is kind of an experience for you where I'm going to be able to really hone in on exactly what it is that's stopping you and help you to be able to clear it. So that's going to be part of our group too. We're going to be doing some instant actualization exercises and some manifestation as well. Yeah, so I've been helping people. I've been doing this work for I don't even know how many years. I'm not even going to guess anymore because my time and space is so out of it. Working from home and doing this work. Me and my husband were talking the other day, I haven't had a job, like a regular job, in I don't even know, 20 years. But it's really been quite an experience, and I feel so blessed to be able to do this. And I love, love, love to be able to help people manifest their dreams and their goals and really put into action what it is that you would like to create for your life. So if you're ready, join me, www.jamie-bates.com. And I am like totally out of time for today. So thank you for listening to me babble. If you have questions, if you have radio show ideas, if you would like to join me, please do. Remember, go buy my book on Amazon, The Empath's Guidebook to Consciousness and Awareness. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and I will talk to you next week. Have a great day. Bye.
You have been listening to Expand Your Reality with your host, Jamie Bates. Thank you for listening.